Hey, it is any old gamer, and today we're going to be talking about accuracy and resistance. So I'm just going to throw it out there right at the start of the video. Accuracy is more valuable than resistance. I'm going to explain why, I'm going to explain how they both work, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how that impacts your rune selection as we go through the video. So let's start off just by taking the most basic aspects of it. The easiest way to think of it is that accuracy is your chance for success to put a debuff on an enemy or to put an inability effect or anything like that, and resistance is your ability to prevent that from happening. Now, it trips a lot of people up because they try and think of both accuracy and resistance from one perspective. So the easiest way to think of it is accuracy is when you're on offense and resistance is when you're on defense. Effectively, accuracy cancels out resistance, and that is why I say accuracy is stronger. So let me give you an example here. Let's take a look at my Triana, who is in 100% resistance build. So Triana has max resistance, and now let's say that I brought my Galleon in against my Triana. Well, my Galleon is in a max accuracy build with 88% accuracy. Now you just are going to tell me right now that's not max, right? Because it's 88%. So here's the deal. Every monster has an innate 15% resistance. Let me find an unruined monster here and I'll show you. 15 resistance. Now some monsters awaken into more resistance. Odin or Annabelle awaken into 40 resistance. But every monster has a minimum 15% resistance. Now that 15 resistance counts no matter what. So that means whether or not you have 85 or 100 accuracy, the monster still has a 15% chance to resist you. That's why when your max Galleon misses a defense break, it's because of that 15% chance. So in reality, maximum accuracy is 85% because anything over 85% is wasted. Now remember, I said accuracy cancels out the resistance against you. So in this case, my Triana has 100 resistance and my Galleon had 88 accuracy. That means that Triana, after the 88 accuracy cancels out the 88 resistance, Triana had 12 resistance left. And because the minimum is 15, her resistance was actually 15. But now let's take a different example. Let's use that same Triana, ignoring the attribute disadvantage, obviously. Let's look at my Josephine. Josephine has 27 accuracy. So again, we cancel out 27 of that resistance, and Triana has 73% chance to resist my Josephine, or my Josephine has a 27% chance to succeed with her strip and provoke. Now, I threw it out there at the start that accuracy is stronger than resistance. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, if I have 85 accuracy and you have 100 resistance, since I started with 0 accuracy and you started with 15 resistance, we've used the same amount of subs in our runes. However, my 85 accuracy cancels out all your resistance. So I will still have the same chance to succeed as if I had 85 accuracy and you had 0 resistance. So going back to that Galleon Triana passive, the Galleon Triana build. Triana has 100 resistance. When Galleon tries to defense break her, he's going to succeed 85% of the time. If Triana had no resistance at all, he would still succeed 85% of the time. So monsters who have their core attributes, their core abilities centered on debuffs, we have to put a lot of accuracy on them. Ciara, Orion, Galleon. And we know that when we go into the fight against them. You know that a well-built, a correctly built Orion is going to have 60, 70, 80+% accuracy. So we know that our resistance doesn't do any good against monsters like that. Now, instead, if you took all those stats and you dumped them into HP or defense, you'd have a better chance to survive the hit. So what we have to remember is that while monsters whose core kit is about debuffs and inability effects, a lot of monsters will do just a little bit of something, enough to deserve some accuracy, but not a ton. So Wusa is a great example. Wusa's skill 1 has a chance to sleep, but it's only a 25% chance, and you don't use skill 1 that often, right? We have our heal on skill 2, we have our AoE immunity, the real purpose for Wusa on skill 3, so that sleep is just like a random thing that happens. If it happens for you, then it's awesome. If it happens to you, then it's like a bad beat nuisance. But you don't build Wusa for the sleep. Generally, Wusa will be very low accuracy. So now if you're in a max resist build, for example, my Harmonia, then if the Wusa attacks Harmonia, he's got a 1 in 4 chance to land asleep, but with that 24 accuracy, she's going to resist it 3 times in 4. Remember, accuracy cancels resistance, so the 24% accuracy cancels 24 resistance, leaving her with a 76% chance to resist. But the Wusa will only have a 24% chance to succeed against Harmonia, but he'll have an 85% chance to succeed against Shayna because his 24 accuracy cancels out 4% of her resistance, and then we get to that minimum 15. So resistance does have its purpose. It's basically to prevent you from getting debuffed or stunned or slept or stuff like that from monsters who are not built primarily around accuracy, or from monsters who need a ton of other stats and you know that they can't be built with max accuracy. Ajir is a great example of that. So we usually try to get at least 50 accuracy on Ajir, but it's really hard to put Ajir in a good build and give him enough HP and enough attack and crit rate and all that stuff and still get him up that high in accuracy. So with that said, how do you know how much accuracy or resistance you should build your monsters with? Well, let's start off with the monsters that are easiest. A monster like Galleon serves one purpose. He's there to defense break and attack buff, so he serves more than one purpose. But basically, a monster like Galleon, you're usually using him in a cleave team if it's not a dungeon team. And so that means it's critical that he lands his defense break. So you might be using, for example, Galleon, Tiana, Zyros. If Galleon misses a defense break, then Zyros doesn't do as much damage. So we're going to want our Galleon in maximum accuracy. Now, Ciara it's critical that she lands her bombs, so we want as much accuracy as we can get on her. But again, this is a monster that needs a ton of stats. She needs to be tanky, she needs a lot of attack, she needs crit rate to turn cycle. It's not possible to give her every single stat, so we have to make some choices with her. I've chosen to go lower crit rate. Some people might choose to go a little bit lower accuracy, things along those lines. So these are the monsters that need a lot of accuracy. And when a monster needs a lot of accuracy, we kind of go on a sliding scale trade-off between the other stats that we need. But what about monsters that don't need as much accuracy but still need some, like a Xingshi? So he has a defense break on his skill 2. He has a lower % chance on skill 1, but he's built for a really long fight. So we're going to want to put a little bit of accuracy on him to offset whatever little bits of resistance are on most monsters. And by that I mean monsters sometimes have a little resistance through innate or through a rune that you couldn't gem it off or whatever, so we want a little bit of accuracy to try and bring the average monster down to that 15% resistance. So a monster whose core kit is not about debuffs and inability, but who has debuffs and inability, we want to get a little accuracy but not a ton. Then you have a monster like, let's say, Talia. Talia does not have a defense break, does not have an inability effect, does not have anything. None of Talia's skills run through any accuracy checks whatsoever, so you do not want to have any accuracy on Talia because it's just wasted stats. Vertihile is the same way. There is nothing in Vertihile that goes through an accuracy check. So same thing for Rakuni. So those types of monsters, we don't want to put any accuracy. Now you might not be able to avoid it if there's an innate or something like that. But generally speaking, if a rune has a lot of accuracy, it's not the right fit for those monsters. So what about resistance? How much resistance do we put on our monsters? Well, this is an important one because you never want to be in what I call no man's land. You don't want to be anywhere between 40 and 70 resistance. Why? Let's say you have 40 resistance. Well, 40 resistance means that you put in 25 through subs. Now, we're not talking about the monsters that awaken into resistance, but a monster that you actually put resistance on. You put 25 resistance through subs. That's the same thing as putting, let's say, at least 32% HP. So if you have one rune with 25 resistance, or one rune with 25% HP, they're the same thing, but the HP is grindable. So that's like more than 3,000 HP that you've given up. Let's use the Wusa as an example. If you have 40 resistance against my Wusa's 24 accuracy, then you have a 16% chance to resist. If you have no resistance, you have a 15% chance to resist. So it was all wasted stats. So generally speaking, you want to go with no resist or go all out for resist. Now, it's not always possible to be perfect. My Bulwark here is an example. He's got 82 resistance. he should be at 100 resistance, but I couldn't quite get him to the stats and sets that I wanted. So if you can't get all the way to 100 resist, you want to try and get at least over 80. So we'll use that Wusa example again. Now Wusa's got 24% accuracy, so my Bulwark will resist 58% of the time, more than half the time. Once you reach that point where you're resisting more than half the time, it was worth the stat investment. And by stat investment, I mean the other stats that you've given up. Like my Bulwark could have more HP or more defense or more of something else instead of resistance. But to me, because he got over 80 resistance, it was worthwhile. Now, what does this mean for your runes? Well, a lot of you who watched my very first videos, my hits video, you would have seen me say that you should always gem flats. And when I say that, I mean like you should always gem the flat statistic off a rune. Now, I want to just go on the record here and say that was my very first planned video, and there's a few things that I would have liked to have done differently, and the way I presented that is one of them. So here's the thing. There is no absolute rule for what you're going to gem away, because a lot of it comes down to rune synergy. Usually, as a general rule, my first choice is actually always to gem away resistance. In that video, I was talking about a specific example, and I didn't clarify that I was talking about that specific example. So I want to just like set the record straight here, because resistance tends to be less valuable than accuracy. Resistance is usually my first choice to gem away. Now, the second choice is actually low roll crit damage on a support rune. And so again, we're kind of getting into rune synergy, which is a much broader video for down the road. But just think about like a slot 1 rune that winds up having HP and speed and 4 crit damage. So that 4 crit damage really doesn't synergize with a rune that winds up on a support type monster. Because this rune doesn't have attack percent, it has to be on a support type monster. Now, if I gem that crit damage for attack percent, it becomes something that's more flexible. So the low roll crit damage here is what I would give up. Now, conversely, if you have a high roll crit damage, you definitely want to keep that. And it's kind of the same thing with resistance and accuracy. So what you're usually looking for is that low roll, because crit damage, accuracy, and resistance all can roll 4s. That's what you usually want to gem away. So on this rune we're looking at here, I would gem the accuracy over the resistance because it's a max roll resistance. But if my options were to choose between equal amounts of accuracy or resistance, then I would choose the resistance to gem away, because accuracy is more valuable. Now, when it comes down to choosing between like a flat stat versus accuracy or resistance, I would usually gem the low roll accuracy or the low roll res before the flat stat, because the flat stat's grindable. But I would keep a max roll accuracy over a flat stat. There's no, and I know this might sound kind of confusing, and unfortunately there's just no absolute rule here. At the end of the day, it's like what's going to make the most sense for the rune so the stats fit together best, and what's going to improve the rune the most. A lot of times what will improve the rune the most is just getting rid of resistance, because resistance fits with less of everything else. Sometimes it's getting rid of crit damage, because that doesn't fit so much on support type monsters that have lower crit rate. If you cannot get rid of one of those two, then it's usually going to come down to accuracy or the flat stat. Those are the things you would want to gem away. And if the rune has all perfect stats, then you just take the lowest stat and re-gem it. So if it has 5% HP, you gem it and start with a higher amount of HP and then grind it from there. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about is leader skill. Accuracy and resistance leader skills. Are they good? The answer is they actually can be good. It's just something that's a little bit situational. So in RTA, I tend to play for second turn. And because I play for second turn, and I play with a lot of monsters that have special debuff skills, like obviously Ganymede can strip AoE attack bar. I use Okeanos, who's got a skill reset and stuns. I use the Beast Riders, who have defense break. All of those skills are important for the success of my team, and they all run through an accuracy check, so I like to use the accuracy lead. And knowing that I'm going to use the accuracy lead allows me to actually build my monsters with a little bit less accuracy. Now, I can't get rid of it completely, because sometimes I am forced to use a speed lead or whatever, but I could build my monsters with somewhere around 40-45% accuracy. And then I know that whether I'm using my Gani or my Oki, if I have 44% accuracy, then it's max accuracy as soon as I'm using an accuracy lead. So the accuracy lead is definitely worth using. Now, resistance lead, same thing. A lot of people don't build enough accuracy into their monsters, and the resistance lead can be really valuable. Even if people are building their monsters correctly, again, it's not possible to put all your monsters to max accuracy. So a lot of times we compromise and we go between 50 and 60. Well, a max resistance monster will resist half the time against a 50 accuracy monster. So if you're using resist lead, half the time you're resisting, that can turn a fight. If you know that you can outspeed, or if you're built for a turn 2 team, then they're very good to use. If you're not sure if you can outspeed, or if you're not built to survive as a turn 2 team, then obviously go for speed lead, or some other leader skill that synergizes with your team. Okay, so that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. Also, I am getting my Discord server going, so the details are in the description down below. Please come in and join in the Discord server. And then, as always, I just hope you guys found the video useful. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you're still with me to this point, then that means that you probably liked the video, found it entertaining, or even better, both. So please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below, because those things help the channel grow, and more importantly, they show me that the video is useful, and that's the whole reason I do this in the first place.